Welcome, everyone. I'm Susan Lauer, the administrator of the U.S. Office for Maharishi Vastu Architecture. We're very pleased to host this webinar that showcases the exciting expansion taking place at the Rendlesham Garden Village in Suffolk, India. In Suffolk, England. Today, we'll hear from several key players in the expansion project. They will present not only a historical perspective on the completed first phase of the village, discuss the new phase, and what the future holds for further expansion of the community and its amenities. Then some of the current participants of the village will join us and share their experience of what it is like to live and work in Maharishi Vastu buildings. Just as a note, most of this presentation was recorded a few weeks back, but we are pleased to have several of the key speakers with us live today to answer your questions. John, would you like to introduce the first speaker and his presentation?
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Susan. I'm John Lippman. I'm the director of Maharishi Vastu Architecture in the United States, and it is an honor now to introduce Dr. Peter Warburton, who is the chairman of Maharishi Foundation Group in the United Kingdom, which comprises 6 registered charities and 9 companies working in the areas of self-development and natural healthcare. This includes Capital Community Developments, the company that is taking on the expansion and development of the Rendlesham Garden Village. Dr. Warburton is also chairman of Maharishi's organizations in Bulgaria, Romania, Zambia, and the United Arab Emirates. Having spent 36 years studying under Maharishi's guidance, Peter is considered a world expert in Maharishi's Vedic science. So now we will hear the recording of Dr. Warburton's presentation a few days earlier, before we will open it for live questions and answers.
It's a great pleasure to introduce this very special project, developing the ideal Vastu community in England. First of all, the background. Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, working with architects and planners and some of the greatest world experts in the ancient science of Vastu, has restored the traditional Vedic knowledge of architecture and town planning, which is designed to create an ideal quality of life for everyone, health, wealth, and wisdom for all. This approach highlights the significance of the built environment in influencing the direction of life in general and the potential to support health and well-being. Our Maharishi Vastu specialist, John Rennick, will explain this in more detail in a few minutes. So our aim is to create a successful and substantial pilot project for Maharishi Vastu in the UK, which will serve as an example to the public and to local planners of the great value of this approach to building and planning in accord with the laws of nature. This will establish the possibility for this ideal development in a realistic way and show it's workable, and we hope then it will spread throughout the country. This UK pilot project will familiarise local planning authorities with the Vastu system of architecture and town planning. In a sense, we're creating a show village, a mixed-use development which includes a residential educational facility and conference facility, where visitors can both attend courses and conferences, but also stay in residence for longer courses. And they can experience living in perfect Vastu buildings and feel what the difference is. Our last course that we held just last weekend in the Residential Educational Centre, the participants were saying how life, the whole feeling of life, completely changed after they walked through the front door in that building. So the current development, because we started this over a decade ago, the current development has 63 homes. It has the residential educational facility and also a natural healthcare centre, which we call a Maharishi Veda Health Centre. The second stage, the phase 2 of the development, is now to build a further 75 homes on an adjacent site, which is 12.6 acres. And we already own the land and we have full detailed planning permission for the development. So it's all ready to start. We're just putting the financial aspect of the project into proper shape. So with this, we'll have 138 homes in total, providing actually through that further opportunities for additional community development. There is scope for further development at Rendlesham, and then having done this one, we can build similar developments all around the UK. For example, to support these developments in other aspects of the requirements of living for those who are part of the development, we're making plans to establish a school offering consciousness-based education. And in this case, we would make it a free school, which is a fully funded government school, but with consciousness-based education included. We already have one such school in the northwest of England with 250 pupils, which is extremely successful. It's been going for about 30 years. So now I'd like to show you some photos of the development. I will share my screen. It'll just take a second to do that. So here we see a map of England and Wales. The UK is almost as a whole. On the right-hand side, where my cursor is, you see Rendlesham, quite close to the coast, on the due east side of the country, but close to London and Cambridge and other major cities. Now, if we look through these images here, this one shows you in the foreground the existing development of Vastu homes in Maharishi Garden Village. To the left of this larger building, we see two smaller buildings. One of those is the health centre we spoke about, and this larger building is the educational residential centre that I spoke about. You see some non-Vastu homes here in a fairly higgledy-piggledy arrangement. And this large green field here is where the new development of 75 homes. So this will be quite an expansion. It'll more than double the size of the existing development. Next, we see an artist's impression of the centre of the new development, a village centre. And then we see various slides of the existing development. You'll notice the uniqueness of the buildings. They are in the Suffolk style of architecture, the colour and everything about it, but following all the rules of the ancient science of Vastu building. Here is another picture of some of the existing buildings, and in the winter time, some of the existing buildings. This is a special garden in the Bromestan, the centre point of the current development. And this is nearby Rendlesham Forest, 3,000 acres of forest, which is well known by scientific research. The air created by forests actually helps people to live longer. So a very healthy place to live. So we're fortunate that out of the whole country, the place we found for this development is actually very healthy. There's very pure air. It's close to the coast on the east. And we have there's a picture in the forest and some of the beautiful countryside around about Rendlesham, just to give you a feeling for it. So I'll stop the share. So in conclusion, the purpose of these developments, it gives not just the joy of living in a community of like-minded individuals, but it's actually a real approach to help create a better quality of life in the nation as a whole, because these Vastu buildings, being completely sustainable, natural, but also built in accord with very deep knowledge of the laws of nature, they help to realign national consciousness in a more constructive and positive direction. And as we know, good health and peace at home is the basis of a peaceful nation and a peaceful world. Maharishi Vastu villages are the ideal wellness communities, which will contribute a basis for strong, integrated society, and greater stability in national consciousness. So nationally, already we see greater awareness of the value of respecting the laws of nature and protecting the natural environment. And this desire for sustainability and health is driving new standards and new policies of construction from the government. Government housing policies now emphasize wellness as an essential ethos in the planning of community development, something that this garden village will exemplify par excellence. So now I'd like to introduce John Rennick, our National Maharishi Vastu consultant, to talk more about this important project. John is a civil and structural engineer, has enormous experience over the last few decades of doing this kind of development, Maharishi Vastu development. He's a Maharishi Vastu professional. So John, over to you.
Well, thank you. I'm a Maharishi Vastu consultant, and in the UK, I'm also director of the Institute of Vedic Architecture and City Planning, which is a sort of international body that looks after Maharishi Vastu. Now, I'm going to share my screen with you now. So here are some of the features that we've got on our site in Rendlesham, and these are reflecting the planners' interest, because the planners have a lot of influence on design in the UK. They reflect the planners' interest in trying to have traditional Suffolk buildings. And so we try and incorporate our features into those requirements. So we have a central roof lantern which lets light down the centre of the house, which is unusual and nice. I think people appreciate that. The houses are raised slightly off the ground. There's a central public garden in the middle of the development. Perimeter fences of each plot denote the Vastu. And finally, the mid-rail and detailing. There's detailing which I think Anthony will be showing later on. Some very beautiful Suffolk detailing which we incorporate. So Maharishi Garden Village, just very quickly, 63 houses and apartments at Rendlesham. Houses are mostly detached houses, all the first houses that we built. Now, just very quickly, Maharishi Vastu is becoming increasingly recognised in government circles in different ways. And it started in about 2000 when we built in Skelmersdale Maharishi Vastu school building. And that generated an award for urban regeneration in the UK, which sort of put us on the map a little bit. And more recently, the Building for a Healthy Life is a document that the planners use. And one of the authors came to the development here and looked at the houses and was very impressed, and then included one of the houses in his design guide for planners all around the country. We didn't ask him to do that. This is one of our houses. But on page 82, it features the things that he liked about it were on the site as a whole. The lower building here, the lower development here is Garden Village. You can see there's a lot of planting in public spaces. The car parking is slightly concealed, and there's other features which are so different from other developments, modern developments in the UK. Houses are very deliberately randomly in the upper picture distributed and so on. But it's quite different. But if you look at the houses in detail, they're not actually that different. The Suffolk house style is there, but we have a much more orderly, much more green space in the layout. And what they liked was that the central green space is called Brahmastan, but the Vastu creates space between houses on all sides. So houses are a little bit further apart. There are fewer garages, I say, and you tend to get long views because the houses are in lines, but they are interesting. They're not sort of mechanically and so on. And finally, Peter Warburton and I gave a presentation to an all-party parliamentary group in the House of Commons about 6 years ago about Maharishi Vastu and other areas of Vedic science. And that went down very well, and it created a lot of interest. And there are other government initiatives or other parliamentary groups looking at healthy homes and buildings and producing white papers, and we're getting some influence in those as well. And we found that with COVID, people working from home, that really, really suits Vastu buildings because we provide an office. So natural materials are very important to us, and addressing climate change through sustainable infrastructure and renewables is important. So some of the houses we've done around the country, this is a house in the north of Scotland with a windmill and ground source heat. And then this is a house in Norfolk with clay materials, natural unfired clay walls and timber. And these are included in the design in a fairly straightforward and effortless way. And then that building in Skelmersdale was done in Lancashire, the school building was all rammed earth. And that involved a lot of community collaboration. The school has gone on to be very, very successful. It's gone from 70 pupils to over 220. And it's now what's called a free school, which means it's on the map for a type of government funding, which means that it's doing very well. My last point was that collaboration is and enjoying the application of Vastu is a really, really important point. And it starts with the design. If we get a new project going, we have workshops with the architects. We don't just tell them what to do. We actually get them interested and so on. And it applies to the builders as well. You need a sense of humour to deal with the builders with Vastu because they, regard it as strange. They've never heard of it. But after a while, these particular ones, they really got quite into it. And their health and safety workshop, when a new contractor came on site, even included that as prompting a presentation on the client's requirement of Vastu, which was very touching. And then finally, when the client gets involved, these are people visiting the site, groundbreaking and laying the foundation stone and moving in. These are all ceremonies that are done, which echo what happens in modern life anyway. Moving in, people have moving in parties and so on. But it's an excuse to get the community involved, and they enjoy it. And it actually puts the house on the map for the local community. And there's this holistic thing. You're not just living in your house in an isolated way. You're actually connected in spirit and in practical ways with the other people on the site. But I want to go on now to introduce Bernard. Bernard McEwen has a very beautiful house in the west coast of Ireland that I visited with my wife about 2 or 3 years ago, with a wonderful garden and so on. He wants to talk about it. Bernard has a history of originally being a planner, but then getting into development and eventually development of Vastu. So it's with great pleasure that I'll hand over now to Bernard.
Okay, thank you, John.
Okay.
Good evening. Thank you, John, for that presentation. So I was asked to speak a little bit about Vastu. The reason where I'm coming from, what I'm going to say, is to do with my own experience. And the reason I'm talking about that now is about 2 weeks ago, on the 21st of March, I celebrated 25 years in this Vastu home. It was one of the first that was built. So I'm coming at it from that angle. What does it mean to live in a Vastu home for a quarter of a century? And I was thinking of what's the overriding experience? And the overriding experience I have more than anything is this feeling of being secure, of having a home where you feel protected. I know it's a very tenuous thing and it's a personal thing. You can't say that everybody's going to have that. I can only speak for myself. But it's very, very strong. And the other feeling you always get is that you never have that experience of being confined, of that feeling of being closed in or cooped up, as the phrase say, or, the walls closing in. It's very expansive when you're living inside a Vastu home. So whenever for example, I go out to the garden or whatever, there's no difference. There's no change. It's not the feeling of, oh, now I've got outside. You're inside, but you're completely open at the same time. And that's the thing that's quite an unusual thing, because obviously I've been in many different houses, and I hope I'm screen sharing. I hope I am. So that's me. That's where we are. As John said, nice garden. But that's the thing. You know, so many people live in their homes, and you know oh my goodness, I have to get out. You know, I have to get out in the country. I have to get outside. In a Vastu home, that's not the experience. The experience is it's the same being inside as outside. It's completely open. You'd never have that confining feeling. I just show you that's an aerial view that was taken when my daughter was being married about 9 months ago. As John or will explain some of the details, but we won't go into that too much now because we don't have much time. I want to say what happened next then. Once I had that wonderful experience, the feeling was need to do more. So Maharishi bought an island off the west coast of Ireland, which was initially called Inishraher, and he renamed it Maharishi's Island of World Peace. And we proceeded to build, and this is it, if you're standing on the island facing east on a beautiful dawn. And here we are. This is what we built, 18 ensuite bedrooms in the middle of Clew Bay, and behind, if you can see it, is Ireland's most holy mountain. So holy, in fact, there isn't a day in the year then there isn't a pilgrimage that goes up that mountain. And its history goes back way, way, way beyond Christianity. It's named after our patron saint, St. Patrick, but its actual history goes back much further than that. So this building we use for retreats. Now, the idea that is that, you know, obviously not everybody lives in a Vastu home, so how are you going to give them a taste of it? Well, this is what we do here, and you have, fortunately, in England, you have in Rendlesham the Peace Palace. So here we have a building dedicated to peace. And I'll show you, this is the view from the top of the island. So very, very panoramic. That's the meditation room, which everybody really enjoys. This is how you arrive by boat. Great experience to start and finish a little holiday by boat. And this is one of the rooms. The rooms are all en suite. And this is finally the dining room. As you can see, there's panoramic views. In every room has a view. You're either facing the sea or you're facing the mountain. So the last thing I'd say is, you know, what's the experience of people who come here for courses? And you know, you will have to take what I'm saying with a little pinch of salt and realize, you know, I'm being genuinely honest. The biggest problem we have is getting people off the island, because what happens is they come and they love it so much that fortunately there's a boat leaving and you have to be on the boat, otherwise you're swimming home. And that's the only way we can get them off half the time, is to say, look, the boat's going, but you ever just leave. And genuinely, people adore it so much. And it's not just the location. Location, obviously, is beautiful, beautiful thing. But the experience of people is so much that feeling I said at the beginning, that we're bedded into something where we feel rooted, we feel protected, we feel at home, and nothing can harm us or touch us when we're inside one of these buildings. That's my own experience. That experience has been related to me by so many different people. And that, I hope, is something that everybody listening will eventually experience, if you haven't already. So I now pass on to Anthony Hardy. Now, Anthony Hardy is a cornerstone of CCD. It's unknown the amount of work that Anthony does in the background. He's smiling there. He's a phenomenal person, phenomenal coordinator, and we'll be absolutely lost without him. So, Anthony, I won't impose on your time. I'll hand over to you. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you very much, Bernard and John, both of you, for your presentation. I would like to follow on by just talking about some of the house types for which we propose to build on the new site. We have planning permission for 75 new homes, and there are 12 designs. 8 of them are inspired and drawn from the existing development of 63 homes here in Rendlesham Garden Village. And here you can see on a single picture all the 12 house types, and you'll see that some are formal Georgian style, some are country style or cottagey or farmhouse style. And even there's one which is modern and contemporary at the bottom left. It's a contemporary modern bungalow. So there's a big variety. They're detached, semi-detached, maisonettes, apartments, bungalows, a big variety, 48 square meters right up to 233 square meters. So a wide variety of choice. And straight away, you'll see all of them have got the roof lanterns that John mentioned, the mid-rail or the detailing around the middle of the building. And they're all raised about 0.5 meter from the ground. So those are Maharishi Vastu aspects. But the styling is what we would call, what is called Suffolk vernacular, what is typical and usual for the local area, what you see in the local area. Right. This is the Eastern, which is the top of our range, 5 bedrooms, 233 square meters. Quite a formal Georgian style. You can see from the portico and from sash windows and so on. Here you can see some of the detailing for the entrance and the brickwork and so on. A lot of attention has gone into the detailing. The fan light, for example, the portico, the arches, the pillars. It's very beautifully done. This is the wood bridge. The Eastern had a hip roof. This one has a pitch roof. This is 5 bedroom. It's the next down. You can see in the eyebrow, and there's some pargeting, which is this decorative plasterwork, which is a traditional Suffolk aspect. And this is the view from the east. This one is in the one that was in render. Here you see 2 of them in brick. It can be render or brick. And here you have close-up of the entrance, so you can get an idea of, again, some of the details, and with an oval fan light. And here you have a view from the west or the rear. In this particular case, they've added a conservatory or sunroom, which is balanced with a projection on the front, which is to maintain the Maharishi Vastu aspect. This is the Aldeburgh, which is on 2 levels. The previous 2 buildings were on 3 levels, ground, first and second. That's the English way of describing it. Maybe not the American, but this is on 2 levels, ground and first. It's 4 bedrooms, beautiful house, very, very delightfully, very symmetrical, very well proportioned. This is the Framlingham. Here we've got the variety. This is deliberately a cottage style to make something different. And it's got both brick and render. So you have, some variety. And also you can see how the parking is concealed and tucked away, as John mentioned. You don't see rows of cars. They're properly put away, so generally out of sight. This is the Framlingham. This particular one from the west, that there's a projection on the front or the east and on the west on both sides. And here's the Framlingham from the side, the one on the corner, looking at it from a view from the southwest. And also in the same photo, you can see some of the attention to the landscaping and the planting, which is very, very important and something that's, we take very seriously. John mentioned Dwisala. This is a semi-detached, 2 units in 1 building. The 3 bays of windows to the left, or the south, it's divided vertically, and those 3 bays are the larger semi on the south, and the 2 bays of windows on the right, they are the smaller semi on the north. The entrance is to the larger semi is from the front or the east, and the smaller semi is from the north. It's tucked away by that wooden fence. And again, you have the eyebrow and some detailing. This is another 2 units in 1 building, and it's divided horizontally rather than vertically. So you've got a 2-bedroom maisonette on the ground floor, and you've got a 3-bedroom maisonette on the upper floors. Here you can see the dormer window and then some roof lights. So you've got bedrooms and some very nice space with a lot of light there on the upper floors. This is the view from the east. Again, it's got, and you can just see the 2 entrances on this photo. Right in the middle, by the road sign, you've got the entrance to one of the units, and on the side, where you can just see the little lanterns and the portico, you've got another entrance to the other unit. So it's got 2 separate units, one for the ground floor, one for the upper floors. Now, this is a Sudborne. We call it a Sudborne. It's an apartment block. It's in a Suffolk farmhouse style, again, to create variety and difference and interest. It's actually got 6 apartments in the building. There are 3 2-bedroom apartments on the south side, ground first and second, and 3 1-bedroom apartments on the north side, ground first and second. And along the middle, you can see again some pargeting or decorative plasterwork. This particular building is called Oak House, and so you've got oak leaves and acorns as the theme of the pargeting. And also you can see some of the attention to detail. Look at the brickwork and the I believe it's called a soldier course or something, and stretcher course, beg your pardon. So there's quite a lot of attention to there. This is a view of the Sudborne from the west. Again, you can see it's both brick and render. It's got a mixture, and then the renders, of course, can be different colors to make it more interesting. Here is an interior shot. Again, John mentioned placement of rooms as being one of the very important principles of Maharishi Vastu. So here you have dining on this side, which is actually the south, and then the west. This is dining living. This is open plan. And you can see the picture window here on the west for relaxation. And in the evenings, you will have sunsets. Sitting there, you will enjoy sunsets. This is a similar interior. Again, dining living, looking at it, of course, from the other side. And interesting, the double doors on the right-hand side, that they go to the kitchen, so you could open those out and have it even more open plan, or if someone's cooking, you can just have the doors closed. Notice the window by the central door. That allows east-west light, which is another Vastu feature. And this door on the far side goes to a small hallway and then to a north door, a side door on the north. And when that's open, that allows north-south light. So you have light coming from east-west and north-south. And if you're very observant, you'll see a little gap in the ceiling. And that is what we call, that is the central, the Brahmastan, the center of the building. And that goes right up to it's toughened glass, and it goes right up to the roof lanterns. So you also get light coming from above, which is beautiful, really beautiful. And here's another interior shot. Again, in the evenings, it feels very natural to be relaxing there. And generally, you'll have the setting sun on the west. So you'll have a view of it from the west. John showed a picture of the central gardens. We have a lot of attention to landscaping, planting. There's been a lot of inspiration from Ebenezer Howard and the Garden City movement, which started from his book in 1898. It's gone all around the world. It's influenced architecture and city planning all around the world. And the concept of greater symmetry and bringing nature into, instead of crowded cities and unhealthy cities, to make them more pleasant, more green, less crowded, perhaps a bit more symmetry as well. He had radial boulevards and so on. So here's the central gardens with a gazebo for seating, planting along the walls, obviously, and again some interesting brickwork, and a lot of it, and some beautiful fountains. So there we are. So that gives you a picture of the existing buildings, here at Rendlesham Garden Village, most of which, 8 of those designs will go over to the new development of 75 units. And there will be 4 new designs, which you saw briefly on the first slide. But now I'd like to hand over to Jeannie Livesley, who's been a champion of both the first project, going way back to 2003, 2004, and the champion of the current project, which is now underway. So over to you, Jeannie.
Thank you very much, Anthony. It's been very interesting, even though we're living with all this knowledge every day. It's been very interesting hearing everybody's talks. I'm going to let the pictures say a lot for me. I grew up in Suffolk and spent many years here. It was a lot quieter then. It's been pretty well discovered since then, but it's still unspoiled. It's largely a rural county, a lot of farmers, and very traditional natural building materials. You can see there's a large house behind the wall. That'll be probably about, 1500, I think that house was built. Very mellow colours everywhere. We're very close to the coast here. We're in a designated area of outstanding natural beauty. There's about 3,000 acres of forest, and the coastal strip is called the Sandlings. It's very light, sandy soil, and that influences the building materials. So there were in the past a lot of handmade bricks here, and our aspiration with this site was to just blend seamlessly into the natural environment with our built environment. So from day one, our houses looked very mellow. They didn't stand out. They were brand new houses, but there was a comfortable feeling that they'd been there all along. So this was, why did we stick so closely to the local vernacular? When we first started, a close friend for many years, Professor Keith Critchlow, he was a professor emeritus. He worked with the Prince of Wales School of Architecture at the time. And we invited him to come up before we'd started, and we said, Keith, what would you give us as a design concept? Now, his background was in all sorts of ancient traditional science of architecture, whether Islam, whether Sthapatya Veda, the origin of Vastu, Maharishi Vastu. He looked for a second at the horizon and he just said, cultural continuity. That was a very profound statement for us. We stuck to it. It helped us get through planning, because the one thing about country areas in England, they're very conservative. And being suddenly coming forward, we wanted to build another 49 houses. They were thinking, well, are they going to blend in the area or are they not? So we gave them the computer drawings. They looked at those and they were still wondering about us. We were new to the area. What were we doing? And then we brought out the artist watercolors, and that did it immediately. It just conveyed that sense of continuity. They said, these are Suffolk houses. How can we object? And it just went from there. It was very quick. We got through planning very easily. And that first site inspired us, obviously, when a new site came up on the boundary, we wanted to expand. We've had a lot of interest since we built these houses, either because people want to live in Vastu or they really like the idea of living in a community. This is another typical one, Suffolk house type, again, that very narrow roof angle. One thing you'll notice, obviously, with the Vastu houses, we don't have chimneys in our development. Some people may do, but we don't. And a lot of modern houses, as everybody will probably have noticed, they look strange because they don't have any chimneys. This has been great to have our cupolas on the roof where we're letting the light in. I mean, in Georgian times, they had very large ones with a big central atrium inside the house. Here, somehow, you forget you haven't got chimneys. And it definitely helps, in my opinion. So barge boards, here we've got, again, those very mellow bricks. They're as close as we can get to the old ones that are very worn. The same pastel color renders, very all natural materials. Pargeting there again. That one is Mulberry Lodge. We've got the mulberry in there. That's a very, very old skill plasterwork. Now, I think John touched on this with the green corridors. Planners these days, it's great. They are encouraging this seamless blending with any countryside around. There's no hard edges. This is very important for various reasons. One is for natural wildlife. They can quickly access areas in and out. And we've noticed since we came and we've built and we've put a lot of landscaping in, got a huge number of birds coming. For instance, we just woke up one morning and found these French partridges in our garden. There's several, every day, and there's a lot of bird watchers here. This is a sparrowhawk just landed on the shed outside. A lot of birds coming now, and we're pleased about that. We don't use any agrochemicals on the landscaping, and I think this helps as well. Baby sparrow sitting there.
Now, what I would like to do is to introduce a few of the people who currently live in the Rendlesham Village so they can share their experience of living there and living in Maharishi Vastu with you. The first, Sunita, is also a resident with her family of the Maharishi Garden Village in Rendlesham. Sunita is she is the communications manager for the Maharishi Ayurveda Health Center, which is located in Rendlesham. And she is about to finish her internship and become a full-time certified practitioner of Maharishi Ayurveda, be able to give consultations as well. So Sunita, I can see you're there. Will you please share your experiences and maybe even some from the people who come from all over the world to participate in the health center there at Rendlesham?
Yes, hello. I'm Sunita Lakshmi, and I've been living together here with my family in the Garden Village since 2019. Our experiences living in Maharishi Vastu have been very life supportive. We like to wake up in tune with the nourishing rising sun, as Maharishi Ayurveda recommends. So the orientation of the east-facing bedroom with the gentle sunlight energy streaming through the window helps to amplify that, helps us to live in tune and supports this lifestyle practice. As a family, we are generally health conscious and like to use non-toxic, environmentally friendly products as we have a young child. So we appreciate that the Vastu home is made from natural, non-toxic materials and wall paints. The wooden flooring and ceramic tiles are very family friendly. We like to sit on our couch and decompress from a busy day and watch the sunset or stargaze at night. Well, the Suffolk skies are beautiful for stargazing. You can see every full moon. The skies are so clear at night. We can see Venus, we can see the stars. And my young daughter, she's become so interested in astronomy. She's only 6 because of the beautiful Suffolk skies. And the lovely large French doors and windows to the west of the home are wonderfully placed to do this Ayurvedic activity. So working in Maharishi Vastu has many benefits. My office is on the 2nd floor of the Maharishi Ayurveda Health Center, and I place my desk to the east window, so there is a lot of sunlight to keep me alert. I find the silence of the building helps me to easily focus. My mind has more clarity, and my creativity has definitely increased. I'm a 5-year postgraduate student currently, and my focus on studies has been the best in my life so far. I'm achieving top grade point average. My daughter is also high achieving. She's learning viola. She's reading extremely well. She's doing theater, and she's just loving everything here. and I can manage my tasks and work efficiently, like writing magazine articles and blogs that I don't really get writer's block that much. Everything just flows very easily and effortlessly. We have happy clients who come to the clinic, and they experience stillness, tranquility, and silence. One patient has reported that the treatments were wonderfully relaxing and at the same time enlivening. So the buildings bring a special level of clarity to the mind and body, and they have an overall wholesome experience that's expansive and that's very life supportive and nourishing.
That's perfect, Sunita Lakshmi. I thank you so much for sharing all that with us. Now I think we have Lawrence Sheaf and Diana Davidson, who actually have lived in Maharishi Vastu for close to 20 years, both in the United States and now in Rendlesham. Lawrence is a renowned visual artist and designer. Diana is an active TM teacher and yoga instructor. So as soon as I put you in as panelists, Lawrence and Diana, would you care to share your experiences of living in Vastu?
Yes, thank you, Susan. Can you hear us?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay, very good. So, as you mentioned, Diana and I have been living in Vastu for a long time, and that's because once we moved into Vastu, we got a very, very powerful experience. What would you say about that, Diana?
Yeah, for sure. It's very, very wonderful. And that's why we've continued to live in Vastu. And I was just saying the other day that the interesting thing is when you're living in Vastu, you kind of get used to it and you are always feeling great and feeling protected and feeling clear. But you will only appreciate it really when you leave. Because when you go out into the world to other kinds of buildings and other homes and so on, there is a very marked difference, which you notice straight away, that there isn't that feeling that you have at home of being very protected, as Bernard said, feeling coherent and feeling very blissful most of the time. So that would be my comment.
Yes, and in my experience, I share those things with Diana. And once we moved into Vastu, whatever it was 20 years ago, we didn't want to live in anything else. So we've always managed to be in Vastu, which we feel very fortunate that was the case. And I'm an artist and a writer, and I have to say that the progression and evolution of my work, in terms of my own subjective experience, has been enormous, being in Vastu. And I know very concretely that energy is coming from the building. Absolutely, you can feel that support. New ideas are coming all the time, every day. You can't wait to get up in the morning because there's always some new wonderful ideas coming. And I got connected with this Academy of Arts for Enlightenment, which is also a part of Maharishi Vastu. And so I've been doing a lot of, all my work, my paintings is related to that knowledge of consciousness that's contained in this, there's a part of this Maharishi Vastu. And all the writings and all that for the Academy, writing articles and things like that. It's just been very, very thrilling and continues to be so. And, that seems to just go on expanding. So, we feel greatly blessed. Every day we feel so blessed to be in Vastu. And, we're very happy to share that with anybody who may be listening and say, get into Vastu as quickly as you can. You'll feel it's worthwhile.
I'd just like to add at the end here that being in this village is very, very special because we feel not only our own comfort and bliss every day, but you walk out and the whole atmosphere is very strong and powerful in terms of that wonderful feeling. And wherever you go, you pretty much know everybody. And so It's a wonderful, friendly atmosphere. And it definitely has a very interesting effect when you have more Vastus together. Like we did live in Maharishi Vedic City, which was a Vastu community in Iowa, America. And that was, of course, wonderful, but it was more spread out. And certainly there was a beautiful effect there. But here, everything is very close by, and the intensity of everything is very strong. And I don't know if the Peace Palace has been mentioned yet. There's this beautiful building which we live right next door to, and that radiates and emanates a wonderful energy all day and all night. So we are really enjoying living here.
And I think you've seen from the beautiful pictures of our village here, how that joy of life and creativity has spilled over into the environment, into the gardens and all the plantings that people have done. You really feel you're walking in a garden when you walk around the village. It's a great pleasure. Anyway, as you can see, we're very enthusiastic about it, and we hope as many people as possible will start taking advantage of Maharishi Vastu.
And coming to live in Rendlesham in the new development.
Yes.
Thank you both. That was really, really just vastly entertaining and enlightening at the same time. We want our dear Jonathan Phillips, who, by the way, is one of our youngest Maharishi Vastu trained architects. He spent several years in internship at the international capital in Holland, working for the Maharishi Vastu Institute there. And from there, he went on to finish and take his full training to become an MVA architect. Now he's in the final phase of his REBA architectural training, working with the very visionary firm of Dalesford. You can correct me, Jonathan. We thought it would be interesting for him to share his thoughts on the future, as well as his experience of working with the knowledge of what Maharishi Vastu brings to design and construction of the built environment. So, Jonathan, please go ahead.
Thank you, Susan. Lovely to see you. And thank you to everyone who's presented tonight. It's been a real feast of both experience, but also great knowledge from all the different exponents that we've got. Very treasured and wealthy knowledge of Vastu that we've got in the United Kingdom. So just wanted to say a little bit about my background, just fill in a few of the gaps, and also just express probably one of the most concrete experiences for me about living in Vastu and how that's relevant moving forward into the next decade, really. Just some thoughts that have been circulating in my mind in the past week or so. So I studied architecture at Liverpool and Edinburgh universities and had a particular focus on architecture and its effects on well-being. And it was this interest in well-being that led me to the knowledge of Vastu. Looking deeper into the principles of Vastu made me aware that it was one of the only theories of architecture that put the health and happiness of the client at the center of the design process. And I think this was something that was really significant to me, and something that is often overlooked in contemporary practice of architecture. So I then trained, as Susan mentioned, as a Vastu architect in Holland and spent over 6 years working with the international team of Vastu architects on projects in multiple countries. And in 2019, I qualified as a Vastu consultant. And currently I'm working for an in-house architectural design team in the sort of high-end commercial and retail sectors for a particularly sustainably conscious and well-being focused company in Gloucestershire known as Dalesford Organic. So having had several opportunities to live and work in Vastu buildings over the past decade, I'd say the experience that has stayed with me most concretely is the simple way thinking becomes unrestricted and the self-imposed limitations that would typically accompany one's thought process disappear. This creates a feeling that anything is possible and increases productivity in many aspects of life. Now, this is just a simple, but it's a very profound effect that I experienced in my consciousness. And it pointed me to the fact that Vastu architecture is more than just a well-being centered approach to architectural design. And more fundamentally, it is an approach to architecture with the inherent ability to enhance human consciousness. And to me, this is the most unique and exciting aspect of Vastu that sets it apart from all other forms of architectural practice. So thinking forward, I think the relevance of Vastu architecture's ability to affect human consciousness in this way, and also the other ways that all of our panelists and guests have expressed this evening, will become increasingly apparent over the next decade as advancements in artificial intelligence will inevitably shine the spotlight on the field of consciousness with greater intensity than ever before. So we're already seeing a debate in artificial intelligence and human consciousness propagate through mainstream media with the recent release of OpenAI's ChatGPT-4 and other systems similar to this. And my feeling is that a natural consequence of this debate will be society's desire to enhance individual and by extension collective consciousness through many different means. So therefore, it's easy to see that Vastu architecture is extremely well placed to become a market-leading product in global construction. Now, developments such as REndlesham Garden Village are setting the foundations for future projects to be constructed throughout the UK. And I have no doubt that we will begin to see this trend in many countries over the coming decade as the knowledge of Vastu architecture and the research into its effects on well-being and consciousness are more widely understood. So there was just some thoughts that I wanted to share with you this evening. And I think it's a really exciting time to be alive, first and foremost, for all of us, but also to be in this field of Vastu architecture, because it's something incredibly unique, not fully appreciated yet by society as a whole, but something, as I've mentioned, I think will definitely become more and more evident as we move into these next few years, which I think will transform the world quite considerably. So it's a really exciting time, and hopefully there'll be many new students who take a similar path to me and join the cause to build lots of Vastu in the world. So thank you very much.
Thank you, John, for playing that for us. It was a really wonderful video. I've listened to it twice or three times probably now, and each time it just gets richer. We actually have quite a number of questions that have come in. This question, thanks for all the information, much needed. What to do when the land is hilly and not necessarily flat, and easier to build, although enjoyable all around mountains with ocean and island views. So this seems to be a site question. John, a general site question. John, would you like to answer that, John Lippman?
Yes, I'm happy to. It is absolutely the case that there are qualities in the surrounding environment that have an influence on the quality of life lived in a house on a site. And if, for instance, there are hills to the east, they block the highly nourishing, very scientifically validated, health-bestowing influences of the first rays of the morning light. And so to get full health, we would not build on a site that has a hill to the east. So that is one of the major examples. And so it is not the case that we're unable to build in an area where there are undulations in the landscape, but rather work with your local Maharishi Vastu office as you are looking for land, and they will help you to locate a parcel that has nourishing influences.
Thank you, John. This one is also kind of a Vastu question. One of the photos, I think that Anthony showed, it was mentioned that the ground level had one entrance and the upper or first level had its own entrance on the side. Since an east entrance is the best, what does this mean for the folks living on the first level who are not then using the east entrance?
We understand that there are different influences depending upon what direction a house is oriented. And this is described very precisely in the Vedic literature. And there is some very, very good peer-reviewed published research that validates this. And fortunately, both east and north oriented buildings have nourishing influences. We choose east as our first choice because the special influence of an Eastern orientation is that of enlightenment, growth of enlightenment in our lives. But the influence of a north-facing house is of prosperity and happiness. And those are wonderful values to grow in our lives. And so if that's the way that it can work out, so that we can have two private entrances in a single building with privacy for each one of them by putting one of each of them on different sides of a building, then we do that, and life will be very good for both families.
Thank you, John. Actually, that reminds me that Anthony, we had wanted to ask you please to define masonette, because at least in the United States and maybe in other countries in Europe, that is an unfamiliar term that you use quite regularly. Anthony, can you please define what a masonette is for us?
Yes, certainly. There are different definitions, but the one that we quite generally use in the UK is that it's a house or a building which has two separate entrances for two separate units. So, for example, apartments would have a communal entrance hall and a shared entrance, which leads off into 3, 4, 5, 6 apartments. But maisonettes would have each unit would have its own separate entrance. That's not the only definition, but that's the definition that we are using.
Thank you. So in the United States, that's called a duplex.
Okay. Okay.
But thank you, because it's a lovely term, much more delicate term and nice term than duplex. Okay. Would like to know if you can share what is the price per square meter of a Maharishi Vastu home, an estimate for the year when these and also an estimation for the year when these buildings were built. Anthony, I think this one may come back to you again.
Just remind me of the question. It was an estimate of the cost or the estimate of the price?
The price, it says per square meter of a Maharishi Vastu house. And then she says an estimation for the year when these buildings were built. And I'm assuming she's referring to Rendlesham. Certainly, we can give her answers for the United States. Other people can probably give answers for their countries, but I think we'll start with Suffolk and Rendlesham first.
The existing project was from about 2005 for construction from 2005 through to 2013, and that's not. There were some quite big gaps in time. And it was done in phases. So, for example, what we call phase 5 was 2011, 2012, 2013. And that was the last 7 units in the phase. So it was over a period of time. And the future project is in 3 phases. And the aspiration is to do 1 phase per annum. So 12 months per phase, approximately 25 units per phase. And on the price, in some countries, there's a very rigid relationship between an area and a price, a square meter calculation and a price. It's not so much the case in the United Kingdom because it depends on the number of bedrooms and many other aspects. But on this project, the prices are between 200,000 sterling up to 775,000 sterling for the different properties. So that's from a one-bedroom apartment at, say, 48 square meters, right up to the eastern, which I think you may remember from the photographs, which is 233 square meters, 5-bedroom detached. So there's a big range from about 200,000 sterling through to actually 800,000 sterling, let's say.
Susan, I would like to add one thing as an answer which might help our particular questioner, because we don't know what country she lives in, and that is that there is a slight premium to build a Maharishi Vastu house. Typically, it runs between 5 and 10%. And so what I would suggest to her to find out what it will cost her to build a Maharishi Vastu house in her country is to speak to local builders who build houses similar to the kind of house she wants to build in the area, and then figure that the price will be maybe 5 or 10% more than that.
Thank you, John. That was a really good suggestion.
Yeah.
But Anthony, we're sorry to put you on the
No,
spot for those figures right away, but you were really good at bringing them out. Thank you. And I will just say for anyone on from the United States that the figures are constantly in flux. And as Anthony pointed out, they can be in flux from one region to another, from a metropolitan area to a more rural area. And it's the materials and the cost of labor that causes the fluctuation in prices. So to give an estimate, even though Anthony did his best to do that, currently is difficult because of the fluctuation in material prices and also in labor prices. And we are not the experts in those areas. We try our best, but it's really the builders who can help you with that. This is an interesting, the first question that I asked that Dr. Warburton wasn't here to answer, Amarjeet actually answered it for us. She said, "You will be very pleased to know that His Majesty King Charles is extremely keen to support all Indian traditional sciences, including Vastu." So maybe it's time to approach him again. Okay. And the rest of these seem to be comments from people who either already live in Vastu. One lady who said she built the first Vastu home, or lives in the first Vastu home built in England 20 some years ago. And also from other people just saying how this is a great vision of and well presented of what is going on in England. So I think we've pretty much answered all the questions. Serene, did I miss anything that we were looking at or talking about while the presentation was going on, or are we okay?
I think we're good, other than, did you see the comments by Sylvia Richards?
Oh, yes. This is probably, thank you very much, Serene. She said, how can we obtain the white papers that John Rennick was talking about? Jeannie, if you're still on, might you be able to help her find that information?
I think if our viewer would like to approach both the inquiries at ccdevelopments.co.uk, we can try and source those for her. And I'm sure John Lippman has got a wonderful library of everything that's going on internationally. There is a very interesting global survey going on, taking experiences, been going on for several years now, taking experiences from people who are living in Vastu homes all around the world. John, would you like to give a bit of information about that? Because there's some very interesting results coming out.
The survey was conducted very scientifically by a professor at Maharishi International University, Sandy Nidich. And then with the assistance of Doctors Lee Ferguson and Anna Bonchek, it was turned into a publishable manuscript. And it was a survey that was very carefully prepared, and it was sent out to everybody who lives in a certified Maharishi Vastu home that we were able to identify email addresses for around the world. And we got responses from 161 people. And without pulling up individual slides, but going kind of generally from my memory, what I will say is that between 60 and 95%, and in most cases around 80, 85, 90% of the respondents indicated that since they had moved into Maharishi Vastu, their lives had improved in the following ways. Their mental health seemed better, their physical health seemed better, there was greater harmony within family members, there was less stress, there was greater achievement in many areas of life, and overall quality of life especially was greatly improved. And so I think that we, to the best of our ability to objectively evaluate what the effect is of living in Maharishi Vastu through a survey, we can say that the effect has been shown to be very, very positive.
Okay, thank you so much, John. And actually, Jeannie, I was thinking, John has the, the slide up for people to, if they want more specific information about the expansion of the Rendlesham Garden Village. That slide is up there with the email address now. And I'm sure if they send to that email address, someone can pass it on to John Rennick if there was some specific white paper that they were looking for.
We'd be happy to do that.
Thank you so much. Okay, everyone, this seems to be the end of our presentation, and we hope that it's inspired everyone to help and keep their attention in the direction and also enliven others in their area to build a Maharishi Vastu community. And for those of you who live in the area, in the UK, or even in Europe, please consider becoming part of this wonderful community.
Thanks so much, everyone, for joining us. It's been a real pleasure. We've been glad to host our distinguished guests from the United Kingdom, and we hope that all of you will meet them in person soon by being their neighbors in this ideal Maharishi Vastu community in Rendlesham, United Kingdom.